The story begins with an adventurous young American couple, Sarah and Mark, visiting a decrepit old house on the outskirts of their small town. The locals call it the Devil's Den, claiming that no one who enters ever returns unchanged. Intrigued by urban legends, the couple laughs off the warnings and steps inside. The house is eerily silent, its walls cracked and covered in mold. As they explore, they find nothing supernatural, no ghosts, no apparitions. But as they prepare to leave, Sarah notices something written in blood-red paint on the wall near the exit. "I will come to you soon." Mark dismisses it as vandalism, but Sarah feels a chill run down her spine. She tries to convince him to stay longer and investigate, but he insists they leave. They laugh about it on the way home, dismissing the note as nonsense. Fast forward several months. Sarah and Mark are now happily married, expecting their first child. However, Sarah's pregnancy becomes increasingly strange. Every night she has vivid nightmares, visions of shadowy figures looming over her bed, whispers echoing through empty halls, and flashes of the haunted house. In these dreams, she hears a voice repeating the same phrase, "You brought me here." Despite her fears, Sarah gives birth during a violent storm when flooding prevents them from reaching the hospital. With trembling hands, Mark helps deliver their baby boy at home. When the child emerges, silence fills the room. He doesn't cry. Instead, his piercing red eyes lock onto his parents, and his tiny mouth curls into what looks like a sinister smile. His appearance is unsettling. Blackened gums reveal sharp teeth. His nails are long and claw-like, and his skin is unnaturally pale. Though terrified, Sarah and Mark try to rationalize everything, convincing themselves that their son just needs time to grow into a normal child. As the years pass, the child, whom they name Ethan, grows faster than any human should. By age 2, he walks. By 3, he speaks in fragmented sentences filled with cryptic phrases like, "They're waiting," or "It's almost time." He never cries, even when hurt. Instead, he laughs, a low, guttural chuckle that sends shivers down their spines. Ethan's physical features become more grotesque with each passing month. His face elongates, his jawline sharpens, and his red eyes glow brighter. His presence seems to warp reality around him. Clocks stop working, electronics short-circuit, and animals flee whenever he approaches. Sarah begins researching possible explanations. One night, while digging through old newspaper clippings, she discovers a chilling article about the haunted house they visited years ago. It describes how a family once lived there before disappearing without a trace. Their last known communication was a letter sent to a neighbor, which read, "We made a mistake. Something followed us home." Realization dawns on Sarah. The words scrawled on the wall, "I will come to you soon," weren't random graffiti. They were a promise. By the time Ethan turns 4, things spiral out of control. He starts exhibiting unnatural abilities, levitating objects, speaking in voices not his own, and vanishing for hours only to reappear unscathed. One evening, Sarah catches him staring out the window, whispering, "They're calling me back." Desperate for answers, Mark installs cameras throughout the house, hoping to capture evidence of Ethan's behavior. What they discover shocks them. Footage shows Ethan standing perfectly still in the middle of the living room, surrounded by swirling shadows that seem alive. At one point, he turns directly toward the camera and says, "You shouldn't have left me behind." Sarah pieces together the horrifying truth. Ethan isn't their biological child. He's whatever entity had been waiting in the haunted house, and they unknowingly summoned it into their lives. One fateful night, during another torrential storm, the power goes out. The house plunges into darkness, illuminated only by flashes of lightning. Sarah wakes up to find Ethan standing at the foot of her bed, his glowing red eyes fixed on hers. Behind him, ghostly figures begin to materialize, shadowy silhouettes of people who look eerily familiar. Terrified, Sarah grabs a flashlight and runs downstairs, where she finds Mark unconscious on the floor. Ethan appears beside her, holding a rusted key. He presses it into her hand and whispers, take me back." She realizes the key belongs to the haunted house, their entry point into this nightmare. Reluctantly, she agrees, hoping to undo the curse. Together, the three drive through the storm to the abandoned property. Inside the haunted house, the air is thick with dread. The walls pulse faintly, as if breathing. Guided by Ethan, they descend into the basement, where an ancient wooden door awaits. Using the key, Sarah unlocks it, revealing a dark void beyond. Before she can react, Ethan pushes her aside and steps through the threshold. The moment he crosses, the house shakes violently. The shadows that had been following them pour into the doorway, merging with Ethan. His form distorts, growing larger and more monstrous until he resembles a towering demon. From within the void, a deep, otherworldly voice booms. "Thank you for bringing him home." Horrified, Sarah grabs Mark and flees the house. As they reach the car, they glance back to see the structure collapsing into itself, consumed by flames. For a brief moment, they think it's over. But then, as they drive away, Ethan's laughter echoes from the back seat. A pair of glowing red eyes reflected in the rearview mirror, ensuring that the nightmare is far from over. Sarah and Mark freeze in their seats, paralyzed by the realization that Ethan is still with them. His laughter grows louder, echoing unnaturally inside the car despite the deafening rain outside. The glowing red eyes in the rearview mirror seem to pierce through their souls. Mark slams on the brakes, pulling over to the side of the deserted road. He spins around, his face pale and trembling, but the back seat is empty. There's no sign of Ethan, no child, no shadow, nothing. Just an oppressive silence that feels heavier than before. "Where is he?" Mark whispers, his voice shaking. "I don't know," Sarah replies, clutching her chest as if trying to steady her racing heart. "But we need to get out of here, now." They speed off again, desperate to put as much distance between themselves and the haunted house as possible. Yet the feeling of being watched lingers, creeping into every corner of their minds. Weeks pass, and the couple moves to a new town, hoping to start fresh. They sell their old house quickly, too quickly, and move into a modest apartment far away from the horrors they left behind. But no matter how hard they try to forget, strange occurrences follow them. At first, it's subtle. Doors creak open when no one is near. Cold spots form in random parts of the apartment, and faint whispers can be heard late at night. Then, things escalate. One evening, while cooking dinner, Sarah sees a figure dart past the kitchen doorway. When she investigates, there's no one there. But the knife block on the counter has been knocked over, its contents scattered across the floor. Mark begins experiencing vivid nightmares too. In his dreams, he relives the night Ethan was born, except this time, the child speaks directly to him. "You thought you could escape me," Ethan says, his voice distorted and layered with others. "But I am part of you now." Desperate for answers, Sarah visits a local psychic recommended by a co-worker. The elderly woman listens intently as Sarah recounts everything: the haunted house, the note on the wall, Ethan's unnatural birth, and the events since. When Sarah finishes, the psychic leans back in her chair, her expression grim. "You didn't just bring something home from that house," the psychic says slowly. "You became vessels for it. That thing you call Ethan? It wasn't just a demon. It was a fragment of something ancient, something bound to that place. By leaving the house, you broke its seal, and now it's free." "What do you mean free?" Sarah asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "It means it doesn't need a body anymore," the psychic replies. "It can exist anywhere, everywhere, and it will always find you." Back at the apartment, Sarah shares what she learned with Mark. Both are terrified but determined to fight back. They research rituals, protective symbols, anything that might help them banish whatever force haunts them. Their efforts culminate in a desperate attempt to perform an exorcism using instructions found in an obscure occult text. Late one night, they set up candles and draw sigils on the floor of their living room. As they chant the incantation, the air grows icy, and the lights flicker wildly. Suddenly, the front door slams shut, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoes down the hallway. Ethan steps into view, but he's not the same boy they remember. His body is grotesquely elongated, his limbs impossibly thin, and his head oversized, resembling some monstrous caricature of a human child. His red eyes burn brighter than ever, and his mouth stretches wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "You shouldn't have tried this," he growls, his voice reverberating like thunder. "I've grown fond of you." Before they can react, Ethan raises a clawed hand, and the candles extinguish simultaneously. Darkness engulfs the room, broken only by flashes of lightning outside. Sarah screams as she feels invisible hands grabbing at her, pulling her toward the center of the circle. Mark lunges for her, but he's thrown backward against the wall, where he crumples unconscious. When the storm finally subsides, the apartment is eerily quiet. Neighbors later report hearing screams but dismiss them as the wind. Days go by without anyone seeing or hearing from Sarah and Mark. Eventually, authorities break into the apartment, finding it completely empty, except for the sigils on the floor, which are scorched black as though burned from within. Months later, in another state, a young couple excitedly tours a newly renovated Victorian home. The real estate agent assures them it's a steal, given its history of sitting vacant for years. As they explore the upstairs bedrooms, the woman notices something odd scrawled on the wall in faded red paint. "I will come to you soon." She laughs nervously, thinking it's leftover graffiti from previous owners. Her partner shrugs it off, and they decide to buy the house. That night, as they lie in bed, the woman wakes suddenly to the sound of faint laughter coming from the nursery down the hall. She gets up to investigate, only to find the crib rocking gently, even though it's empty. On the wall above it, written in frever,